question of satisfaction with the PRC ruling China. Again, in 2005, this was about the level, 2005. This is the level now of dissatisfaction. Okay? Who is it? What's even more troubling is when you break the sample into simply non-students and students. We had about 100 students in this sample, 94 students, I think. You'll find that a very large proportion, almost a majority of students, are the ones that are dissatisfied with the Hong Kong government's handling of relations with the PRC. When it's satisfaction of the PRC government's handling of relations, again, and notice the level of very dissatisfied among students versus non-students. This is what we're very concerned about. We are very concerned that in 2005, what was a local issue in which the central government had a lot of credibility and support because it had acted to remove Deng Jiwa and put in Donald Zheng. Okay. The circumstance now is very different, and people are feeling very different about the central government, particularly students. Notice this. When we break it down by students versus non-students on satisfaction with the central government's rule of China, we have, for the first time in our surveys, a majority of students who are dissatisfied with the central government's rule of China. Okay? This is a very significant and, frankly, alarming development. All right? This is crucial to understand. Okay? Very crucial. Now, what else has been happening? We have found that there has been, this may be why the government's campaign doesn't have much content to it. Okay? Because when people start looking at the contents, they get more unhappy with it. You'll notice there's almost a direct relationship with how much attention you give to the issue. So more attention doesn't mean that you're necessarily, things are going to get better for the government. All right, so what we asked was a series of questions. Was if this happened, would you still support, or would you now oppose? Or if you opposed, we asked them, if this happened, would you still oppose, or would you now support? Okay? And you can read this report, because it goes in great detail how I do the mathematics. You can check my math, all right? And effectively what we find is that if you include the don't knows, I'll show you the worst case in just a minute. This includes the people who say don't know, because most of the time, about 2/3 of people who say don't know will go whatever decision is made. They'll agree with it after the fact. Okay? Fine by me, whatever you want. So we included in the first table. And you'll notice that if Beijing promised to include everybody in the FCs, well, you get right at half, including the don't knows. If you expand the FCs, a little over half. If they abolish the appointees to the district councils, quite a lot over half, well over half, almost 2/3. If corporate voting was abolished, over 70%. And if Beijing promised, just promised to abolish the FCs, it didn't change the package otherwise, just promised, 75%. That's pretty astonishing. All right, this is the so-called worst case. This is whenever we take everybody out and it's only the people who say they support. Okay. So, increasing the right to vote, not quite 50. Extending, not quite 50. If the DC nominated and voters elect 6, you get just over 50. Abolish the DC appointees, over 50. Including, going back, this is the 2005 proposal. This is just what they did in 2005. Put all the directly elected district council members on the Chief Executive Election Committee. If they just went back to that, you would get about 55, 56% support. The old proposal. If you abolish corporate voting, if you promise, again, the promise gets the highest response. Now, I have some problems with this idea that promise may be enough. Right? Whenever you look at it in terms of the way the party members respond, you'll notice step by step moving into a situation where that is not unimaginable. Go back to 0506. This is from November 2005. And you'll notice that you had about 39% supported it, 37% opposed it. Just about the same as now. Same proposal, very little difference. Okay? The proposal is very similar to 2005. Public opinion is very similar to 2005. Again, the context, though, is different. That's what's important. The context has changed. Other attitudes have changed. When we asked people in February, did you support it? This is really interesting. When we asked people after, in a second survey in February, did you support the government's plan? 36% told us they support it, which is accurate. Okay, because we had about 39%, remember? But only 25% said they opposed it. Okay, so this is closer to the accept. Okay, if you go back to the accept, it's almost proportionately about the same. Okay, so support and acceptance, this turns to would you have accepted it effectively? Right. If they had another chance, though, well, you'll notice that the proportion who say that they would support another chance, again, it's not quite a majority. It's much more than people who say they oppose it, but it's still not quite a majority, even after the fact. All right? So the government's proposal in 2005 was weak and weakly supported even after the fact, in very different circumstances. The economy was getting better. People were much more optimistic about China, China's future, okay, going forward, what was going to happen in the Olympics in 2008, etc. Okay? The circumstances now are very different, and we might get very different responses to this question. Before the vote, people told us they were going to blame Donald Zhang and the Beijing government. Before the vote. The pro-democracy camp was fourth. After the vote, they blamed the pro-democracy camp first. Right. So the key thing is, I think, and the bottom line of this report is that there are definitely reasons to be concerned. The context has changed. Public opinion might be in some ways very similar to 2005, but their reaction to the same sort of, quote, veto might be very different this time. People who are angry with the government and who oppose it are somewhat different. Okay, more men supported in 2005, more men opposed now. Students were not as involved in 2005, now they're definitely involved. And we've seen a big leap in people under age 30, dissatisfaction and activism since January this year. Okay, so I guess we should take that Q&A.